While Ukraine is putting a lot of pressure on the Russian economy, striking some of the most valuable oil refining and storage facilities, Putin is slipping more and more into delusion. He recently just claimed that there is about 5,000 Ukrainian servicemen that are about to get encircled. The problem is he referenced a location which is located deep in the Belgorod region, over 100 kilometers away from the border with Ukraine. Yes, that is the current state of Putin's understanding of war. Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Let's look at some of the latest Putin statements and see just how far he went down the rabbit hole. As always, this is probably one of my last videos that I'm going to be doing while traveling, and hopefully next one will already be coming from the studio. So Putin had a press conference. I mean, it wasn't really a press conference because he got caught reading from the teleprompter. So there was pre-prepared answers to probably pre-prepared questions. But in any case, Putin said certain things, and a lot of these things just made absolutely no sense. Coming back to that idea, Putin stated that there was about 5,000 Ukrainian servicemen that are now encircled around the town of Stary Oskil. Stary Oskil is not a town in Ukraine, that is a town inside of the Belgorod region, where quite deep in the Belgorod region, we're talking over 100 kilometers from Ukraine. What he actually probably meant in his grandpa brain is that Ukrainian forces around the river Oskil, essentially the town of Kupiansk, are already encircled and about to get dismantled, coming back to that old narrative that Russia is supposedly controlling Kupiansk and Ukrainians there are encircled. This has been proven countless times false by Ukrainians with videos and everything. So whatever data you might want to have to prove that Putin is just lying to you is there. Yet he is continuously feeding these false narratives to Russians and a lot of the Western media, unfortunately. Secondly, when we touch on the topic of the front lines, Putin also stated that apparently the Ukrainian town of Sumy, which is located some 30 kilometers from the border of Russia, it is around the northern Ukraine, northeastern sort of a direction. That town is close to the border to Russia, and Putin claimed that Russian forces are already moving into that town, and there are some 10 kilometers, potentially even less than 10 kilometers, already are to that city. That is completely untrue. He mentioned that as Russia is building sort of what he called the border territory between Russia and Ukraine, this gray area, strike area, which was absolutely not true. We followed this day in and day out, where Russians tried early in the year to advance towards the Sumy direction, but those advances have been completely stopped and Russians haven't moved an inch maybe since April. There was absolutely no movement there. But once again, this confirms to us that whatever information is being fed to Putin is completely delusional. He has no idea where Russian forces are on the front line. Even the most blatant Z propagandists, they are not even understanding what he's talking about, either with the Oskil River, the Kupiansk, or the direction of Sumy. But more importantly, it is Ukraine that is having an advantage on the front line. We have seen some of the Russian Z propagandists claiming that month of June was pretty pitiful. So again, information from the Russian sources that Russia was able to capture only about 100 square kilometers during the month of June. This is the Russian claims. That's absolutely crazy low number of territory gained for the Russian forces in a month of June, which is the summer campaign. This is the prime time supposedly for the Russian style offensive warfare. Yet they're getting nothing. But when we look at other sources that are more neutral, such as Deep State or even the Institute for Study of War, suddenly we're getting perspectives that it is actually Ukraine that is pushing back at Russia. That Russia, on all of their major directions that they need to get to, they are not really having any success. Some of the marginal advances here and there are only in the areas where Ukraine is not really, I mean, it's not that they're not defending, but there's not priority areas. The most significant gains and most threatening situation that we have been talking long and hard about was Kostatinivka, which is the town around Bakhmut, Chasiv Yar, and just kind of south of it. Kostatinivka was encircled right now from like sort of three sides, from the south, from the north, and from the southwest. And it was definitely a big problematic situation. At the start of June, there was suspicion that potentially Konstantinivka could fall. We've seen that it was the Syrskys, these fast response brigades, that received an order to go and fight in the Konstantinivka and try to stop Russian advances. And the reports are from people that are fighting there that it is working, that forces of Ukraine are able to fight back the Russians. But overall, reports right now from Konstantinivka is that situation is hard, the fighting is hard, Russians are trying to advance, but the new arrived forces are definitely helping out, and Ukraine is defending Konstantinivka. Remember, my cutoff point is if Russia cannot capture Konstantinivka by the end of July, then we can say that it was an absolute failure on that specific direction. I already by this point can call failure on every single other part of the front line for Russia for the year 2026 for the goals that they have claimed. But end of July, Konstantinivka, if it's not captured, Russia is absolute garbage. Not that we didn't know that beforehand. In other directions, Ukraine is fighting back. They are counterattacking, they're gaining ground. Not a lot of it is getting reported because Ukrainians are specifically staying silent, and that's good. So only we report about this when Russians are telling about this. But apparently no one is telling about this to Putin. The second big topic that Putin talked about, he touched on it, is the fuel crisis. You know, something is happening in Russia. Ukraine, by this point, is causing major damage to the Russian, specifically fuel supply, like high-grade benzene, fuel, and so on. They are having major issues getting their logistics in check. They're having major trouble. Like most of the Russian regions are having some limitations on the oil supply. Russia has even asked Kazakhstan to help them with supplying the fuel, which is insane. Russia, the absolute oil powerhouse of the world, is asking for essentially oil products to be delivered. And the only way that they're supposedly gonna get them right now is they're gonna buy them from India. So the current scheme of Russian monetization of their oil is we sell oil to India with a discount, and we then buy the refined fuel from India back to us. That is the Russian business model. It is absolute insanity and makes no sense when you look at it economically. Inflation is skyrocketing in Russia. The fuel has risen more than 10% since Ukrainian strikes have begun, and we are only at the end of the month of June. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. Ukrainians have prepared many different plans for Russia this year and this summer, and it's very clear that Russia is having absolutely no response to this, and it's only getting worse. There have been recent pictures of Ukrainian missiles striking in Volgograd. There was a factory that was producing missile launchers, and one of the factory sites where the missiles, Ukrainian Flamingo missiles, hit, we saw the damage that those Flamingo missiles caused, and it was massive. Basically, that whole massive building was gone. 1,000 kilos of 1,000 kilos of explosives can really make or break, mostly break. So Putin, looking at this whole situation with the economy, with the gas shortages, he basically tries to say speak with both sides of his mouth. He's stating both that it's not a big deal, we're having everything under control, just wait a little bit and we're gonna get all of that fixed. Sure, grandpa. But also on the second one, he's saying that it is a big trouble and we all need to tighten up our belts and try to live through this because Ukrainians are this terrorist regime. I'll remind you that none of this has to happen. Russia started this war. Russia can end this war at any moment. So that is when we're coming to the point number 3, which is about the peace negotiations and potential Russia, some kind of a deal. Ukraine actually, at least if we judge by Putin, has proposed a third option that we've talked so far. Supposedly, Ukrainians proposed to Putin that they would want to enclose the fighting that is happening to the 5 regions of Ukraine, which is Crimea, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Luhansk. and therefore exclude the strikes on other areas of the countries, both in Ukraine and also in Russia. But apparently Putin is rejecting that one as well. And I mean, this is really bad for Putin. All of even the pro-Russian analysts, they're looking and saying that things are going really bad. Ukrainian middle strike, the strikes against Russian logistics, we have no answer for that. And the problem is that they don't need to even strike every single vehicle for the logistical system to completely collapse. A good example is what was happening in Strait of Hormuz. Iran didn't strike that many vessels, yet other vessels and other entrepreneurs were too afraid to actually go and do their business. It paralyzed the whole system. And sort of similar things are happening right now with the Russian logistics in the occupied territories of Ukraine and actually inside Russia as well. When some of these private companies, they're seeing their assets being stricken, they cannot insure their goods, they cannot get any kind of proper understanding whether or not they're going to get some kind of economic benefits for trying to send the material, goods, produce, fuel, etc., then suddenly people that even driving these trucks, they're like, yeah, I'm not sure if I want to do this. And this is the Russia where Russia is finding themselves in. Ukraine is supposedly striking by this point 17 to 20% of all cargo in the occupied territories, especially going to Crimea. And that is already causing a mass paralysis inside of the Russian-controlled territories. But once again, we're only in the month of June, and Ukraine is stating that they are just going to escalate this campaign even further. And I have no reason to doubt it. So when we're talking about some kind of a peace negotiations, when all of these Russian analysts are coming in and saying, hey, you know, maybe signing like a pause, like freezing this conflict on the current lines of conflict is not such a bad idea after all, because it's looking really bad. And we see people even questioning Putin. By the way, that guy that was making the video about that he's going to go against Putin, oh, well, he got arrested. Well, now we're going to guess whether he's going to get sent to the nut house or just to prison, or he's going to get the window treatment. Who knows? I think it's not going to be the window treatment, because that's usually for the oligarchs. You know, that's a preferable way out. Instead, he's going to be sent to Russian gulag. In any case, we see that there is discontent inside Russia. We see there's economic problems. And now Zelensky and his team is presenting that all the problems, all of this war not stopping is because of Putin. And when Putin is rejecting not only one deal, the second deal, even the third deal, it's painting him in a bad light. And it's really causing a lot of internal pressure in Russia. And with Ukraine putting even more pressure, I am pretty sure that at some point something is going to happen in Russia, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. But I think the absolute bottom line for all of this is what Ukraine is saying, but also not saying openly, which is that all of these current offers that Putin is getting are for now only. That if they're going to continue breaking Russia, and when they're going to start hearing cracks, when Ukrainians are going to start capitalizing in the front lines on all of these problems that Russia is accumulating right now, at that moment, this offer will not be on the table anymore. At that moment, it's Russia out, everything back, Ukraine wins. Trust in Ukraine, support Ukrainian armed forces. I love you. Slava Ukraini, support the fundraiser, and I will see you next time.